The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday for October of 2017. And tonight's topic is going to be Speeding is Encouraged, Page Speed for Healthcare Websites. All right, so my name is Dr. David Wank, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a general dentist in New York City. I practice in the city. I see patients 5 days a week, and I am the president of Short Hills Design, which is a web development and internet marketing firm for dentists and physicians. Okay, so here's my contact information. I'll always have that available for you. I'll put it up at the end. We'll look at that again later if we need it. So, coming up on Webinar Wednesday, actually one of my favorite webinars coming up is going to be Introduction to Inbound Marketing for Healthcare Websites. That, I believe, is going to be the wave of the future. And so I think it's important that, in fact, it's so important I'm doing 2 webinars on it. The webinar on November 15th is going to be about what is inbound marketing. A lot of it has to do with newsletter marketing and lead magnets, letting people say, someone who visits your Invisalign page gets a prompt to download a PDF that teaches them, 5 tips or 5 secrets about Invisalign kind of thing. And then in December, we're going to actually talk about how you do it and how you implement it in a basic way. Like anything else, it can get very, very complicated. But certainly we want to start it off. And for our purposes as dentists, usually some very basic marketing it can be very, very productive and very helpful. So tonight, we're going to do our introduction. We're going to talk about the book just in the sense of where this fits in the workflow. We're going to talk about page speed as a ranking factor, and so why we're actually having this conversation. We're going to discuss why is my website slow, if it is, and what we can do to speed up your website. So here's the introduction. Technically, the concepts here are not technical. Actually doing it is a little more technical, depending on how technical you want to get. To implement some of these things, you might need help from a web developer or someone who has experience, but to understand the why, that's pretty straightforward. So, and obviously, if you have questions, just ask. There's a question button. You can raise your hand on your GoToWebinar control panel, and I will see the question. Obviously, if there is a question that's appropriate for the time, I'll take it. If not, I'll hold it to the end because I do want to get people out of here on time as I promised. Yeah, so stop me at any time by pushing that button and I'll take a look at the question. So, slides. I don't really bother sending you guys slides because they just wind up getting thrown out if they get printed. Certainly, at least that's what I do. But certainly, if you'd like a copy of the slides, let me know. Shoot me an email. Join our Facebook group and let me know, and we will get you a copy of those slides. All right, so let's talk about now the web design workbook for dentists. And so we're not selling books tonight. And the reason I wrote the book, it's a non-technical guide for dentists and members of the dental team. It's not a do-it-yourself. It's not going to teach you how to build your website. It's what you need to know before you invest in a website or in search engine optimization. It is, I think of it like when we did the driveway many years ago. I didn't need to know what size the pebbles were that they used to lay down the tar, but I needed to know that it was smooth when the job was done, and that they didn't scratch the rocks on the side of the driveway when they did it. So where does page speed come in the web design workflow? Now, page speed comes in the really when we build the site, you want to think about page speed, and when you are working on the site, once you're kind of in the site and in with what you're doing, that's when you want to also think about what's going on with page speed. The concern is that obviously you build it and you're going to make it, run quickly, so it's good. However, what you're going to also want to do is, as you build the site, you have to remember you're going to add blog posts, I hope. You're going to add articles. You're going to do things. And by doing that, you will every once in a while have to check your page speed to make sure things didn't slow down or that scripts aren't running slowly or you haven't forgotten about things that you're not using anymore that might be slowing you down. So let's talk about page speed as a ranking factor. Now, one of the reasons that we're here is unfortunately because Google said so. And what Google wants to do, other than make money with ads, among many other things, is thinking about a user. They want users to find websites that are relevant to what they're searching for and easy to use. So obviously, when we're thinking about this, when we're thinking about ranking, and we'll talk more in depth about ranking in a moment, subject relevance. So that's organic SEO, basically. So is what I'm searching for relevant? So if I'm looking for implant dentures, Millburn, New Jersey, or implant dentures, Maplewood, New Jersey, is that page about it? And once you've gotten that far, how usable is that page? And obviously, we've talked about many, many times. You can go back to our organic SEO webinar, I think from February or March, to learn the nitty gritty about that. But what you're going to find is that if there are 20 websites that talk about implant dentures in Maplewood, New Jersey, one of the factors that goes into them to where Google ranks you is usability. Obviously, if your page mentions implant dentures as one of 17 different services, and my page is just about implant dentures, my page certainly should rank higher than yours. Yours is about 17 things and mine's about one. But if we both have really good pages, or if 5 of us have really good pages about implant overdentures, then what's going to happen is Google's going to look at other factors, and one of them is going to be usability. And so under usability, what do we have? We have navigability and organization. Sometimes you'll hear me talk about information architecture. And that really means, is the website structured in a logical and organized way? These days, I'm surprised to see that I just see a lot of sites that are still not organized in a clean way, which surprises me for dentists because we are some of the most organized people we'll ever meet. Tablets and smartphones. That's sort of a newer thing in the last 2 years or so. That, remember, if you've ever tried to use your tablet to push a button and the button's too small for your finger, it's not because you have big fingers. Same thing on your iPhone. If you're trying to push a button on your iPhone and the other button is too close to it or too far away and you can't really click that, that's a usability issue. And that's why we have standards for what buttons should look like and how they should wind up on mobile and on tablet. And page speed, of course. How fast did the pages load? So you might imagine this site should be well organized. You should be able to click it, any buttons pretty easily without having to struggle, and the site should load quickly. Now, obviously, this is all about competition. Now, you'll hear me talk about organic SEO and about all other things. And remember, at the end of the day, you're competing against your competitors. You are not competing against Amazon or Coca-Cola. And the issue is that people don't like waiting online. And that is why page speed matters so much. If you think about it, waiting online for coffee in the morning, you know you have to wait, but you don't want to wait. And if there's a coffee shop right next door with no line, you might go there instead. So page speed matters, literally and figuratively. And one of the ways Google can tell these pages apart, like we said, here I'm using Dentist Tribeca as my example, but again, let's say we did Dentist Tribeca or whatever it was, Implant Dentures Tribeca, what you're going to wind up having is look at the speed of the page. And obviously, the faster the page loads, the better the user experience. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that the experience is good, but certainly that means the experience is fast. There was a post recently on Dentaltown where someone said that he ranks first for a lot of things organically, but he's not getting phone calls. And that could be from one of two reasons. Reason number one is that you're ranking for keywords that nobody's searching for. If you're ranking for implant overdenture dentist who took 300 CE credits in the last 5 years and has an office across the street from the gym, I don't know if there are many people who would match that, come up for that term. So if someone's searching for a search term that no one's searching for, then it really doesn't matter. And you can rank first for that, who cares? So you're ranking for a keyword that no one's searching for, number one. And number two, the question becomes, do you have a messaging problem? If you have a lot of traffic coming to your site and nobody's staying, maybe you're not giving them the message that they want. And so obviously, before you go out and build a new website, you've got to make a diagnosis. And when new clients call us, they say, should I build a new site? And I say, I don't know. We have to figure out what's your problem. If your problem is messaging, a new site might not be necessary. So page speed, the reason I like page speed, that's something that you can actually look at. Unlike organic SEO, yes, you can certainly look at keywords, you can certainly look at the structure of your pages, but page speed, it is very tangible. You can test it, like, it's like periodontal disease. You can show patients probing depths, or you can show them moving teeth. But when you take your intraoral camera and show them a hole in their tooth, you don't really have to say much to show that this is a hole that we have to fix. So, how fast should the pages on your website be? And the truth is, they should be in the 3.5 second range. If you can get faster than that, that would be great. So, the page speed being less, than 3 seconds, that's fast. And so, obviously, not all pages on your website are going to be able to be this fast. I would want the majority of them to be this fast. However, if you have a gallery page where we're loading images where one would expect it to have to take a little longer to load, I don't have a problem with that. I don't want it being 12 seconds, and there are ways to do it so visitors don't sit and wait while the page loads. But certainly your home page or your implants page or your meet the dentist page, those pages have to be quick and load quickly. So let's take an interlude here for ranking factors once again. I seem to do this in every single webinar that we do, but it's that important. So as all of you returning webinar Wednesday viewers know, there's more than 300 ranking factors when it comes to SEO, determining where my site will rank versus your site for a certain subject. And one of them, and again, these are some, and these are not ranked by how important they are, but I put page speed there. It is a factor. So we do know, and again, we've done webinars about link profiles. We did about keywords. We did Google My Business. We did NAP. We did a lot of these. We did SSL. So we did a lot of these already. And what it shows is that there are a lot of things that go into making a website rank or web page rank. And so while we do know what factors go into it, what we don't know really is what relevance they are. What's the weight change? In the sense that, so if you and I have pages that are very, very fast and they are, here, better example. If my site is mobile ready and very slow, and your site is not mobile ready, but really fast, which one of us would rank first, all things being equal? I don't know. Is in terms of if you have a better H1, H2 tag structure for, let's say, implant dentures than I do, but your page loads in 10 seconds and mine loads in 2. So obviously, all of these items are important. Since we don't know what weight each of these gives in the algorithm, because otherwise we would just say, hey, let's make it fast and responsive, and we'd know the answer, you'd rank well. There's too many factors, and there are companies like Moz.com that they do experiments to track how the algorithm responds, but that is more reactive than proactive. Proactively, I would do the best you can to assume, they're all equal. Well, for the most part, many of them are equal, and that you really need to work on the ones that are the most important. And the most important ones, I'd probably tell you there's 2 tiers. The most important ones are probably page speed and let's see here, keywords, keyword selection, page speed, keyword density, keyword placement, NAP. These things at this point are probably much more critical than SSL and server location. SSL and server location are important, but not, and domain age, but not anywhere near how important page speed is or actually having the right keyword selected. So, and of course the other answer is because Google said so. I hate to say that, but very often we do certain things because Google said so, and I hate to do that. But since Google is the one controlling the rankings, if we want to be in this game, we do have to follow the rules. So page speed is a ranking factor. And the question is, how can you test your site to check? That's really easy. There are some free online tools that we'll talk about in a minute, but you can also go and visit your website from multiple locations. You can go from your home, your desktop at home, your desktop or your iPad in the office, in the Apple Store, the Microsoft Store, while you're on the train or the subway, whatnot. But by using multiple locations and different devices, you'll start to get a feel just, as a human, you get a feel, is this slow? Is this fast? Compared to other sites that you're used to visiting. Now, the recommended tools I have for testing page speed, there are 4 of them. The basic ones are GTmetrix, and the link is here. And Pingdom has a speed test here that I also recommend. Those are great because those will give you very broad overviews of what's going on with the site, and will help you figure out what's wrong. If you want to get into more details, webpagetest.org is a nauseating amount of detail of what's going on the site and what can be fixed. And the page speed tool, I'm not a huge fan of Google's page speed tool, and the reason is I like it. But the reason is because they give you a score, 90 out of 100, 95 out of 100, and usually anything over 80 is fine. In fact, there's a couple of blog posts in the last few years where they try and actually get to 99 out of 99 or 100 out of 100, and you can't do it. In fact, there is there's a thing about Google Analytics, but basically the way Google has set it up, it's impossible to actually get 100 out of 100. Because if you do what Google says for getting the page speed where you to 100 to 100, you're violating one of their other recommendations about using analytics. So, take that for what it's worth. So why is my website slow? And that's a question we get pretty often. And to refresh this concept, the idea is that, as with almost every SEO factor, you're competing against similar sites. You are not competing against Amazon, Google, or eBay. eBay loads and Amazon loads lightning quickly because they have all sorts of cluster servers built, and they're caching and doing all sorts of crazy things for enterprise scalability that we don't need to do. Now, as I was telling someone today, it's not about whether your page loads at 3.6 seconds or 3.2 seconds. It's about if you have three competitors, or let's say you've got one competitor, and your site loads at 8 seconds and hers loads at 3 seconds, she'll win. If you're both hovering around 8.1 or 8.2 seconds, which isn't really good, it'll be a wash. And if you're hovering around 3.1 or 3.3 together, it'll be a wash. But the idea is that I don't know where your competitors are going to be, so I want to keep you around 3.5 seconds, because that will put you, again, where everyone else wants to be. And as it turns out, you have 10 competitors, and you come in, your page comes in at 3.1 seconds, and everyone else is 10. That's great. And as they get faster, they'll catch up to you, but not the other way around. So, two factors generally, or two big categories of why your site could be slow. The first one is offsite issues, and the second is onsite issues. Now, this sounds like SEO, but it's not. So, your web host. The real issue with web hosts is if your web host is going to be fine or it's not going to be fine. The majority of the 10 plus years I've been doing this, I've only come across a handful of web hosts that had problems with speed as the service itself, and you've never heard of any of those. So I wouldn't worry about that. Most commercial hosts are totally fine. The risk of using a commercial host, if there is one, we have plenty of clients who do a big commercial host, is that sometimes depending on the time of day, the day of year, things can slow down. When California comes online, it's, late morning when California wakes up, it's late morning for the East Coast. So you might see a dip there kind of thing. But or if it's the night before Christmas or Christmas Eve, you may see higher traffic because people are, at home and they're on the web. So certainly there are variations in that. I'm not sure that's enough to change hosting. Obviously, we provide hosting for our clients as well as an option. It is not required. It's an option. We are a smaller scale, so there is less variability in that regard. But again, this is something that you don't usually have to deal with. So on-site. So really that question is, what is running on your website? As we've talked about many times, websites are built from HTML files, CSS files, which show us what the HTML is supposed to look like or the style, image files, and some scripts. And so if you put a web page together, the HTML is the structure of the page. The CSS is what the fonts look like and the size and what colors are there. The imager, of course, the images and the scripts are the things that help give the page some interactivity, such as Google Analytics. Now, you might think interactive as a button, but sure, a button click is something that could kick in a script that makes something happen, like a contact form. You fill out a form and click submit. That data that you filled in, David Wank, whatever my email is, my choices, whatever, and hit send, that calls a script. And so these are the things that are on your website that run. Now, HTML and CSS usually are not issues in terms of speed. It's just text. So where you run into speed issues are with large images, scripts and plugins you're not using anymore, and a failure to use a caching plugin. Then we'll explain what those mean. So first thing is large images. The problem with large images is that obviously they're large. Remember, every time a website has to load an image, it's got to download it from the web. And so if you've ever been in the position where somebody sends you an email with a picture off their digital camera and it's 5 megs and it takes you, 2 minutes to download, that's what we're talking about. You can certainly show a quality picture for, 50 to 70 kilobytes. It doesn't have to be 3 megabytes. And obviously, when you're sizing images, and we talked about this when we did our Lightroom webinar about sizing images for the web, is that it depends on what you're doing with it. Now, certainly, today's digital cameras can take an 18 megapixel picture. You certainly don't need that for the web. If you're going to print a 10 foot by 10 foot banner, maybe you need that kind of resolution, but certainly not for the web. So one of the things you can do if the images are too big, and we're going to show you how to look at that, is reduce the size of your current images. And that you can do with plugins for WordPress, WP Enable Media Replace, and any image editor to help clean those images up. And if you want to reduce the size of new images before you post them, any image editor that you want to use. And that is really, you can use Photoshop, you can use Lightroom for that, you can even use Preview on the Mac, or I think Paint Pro now, or Paint, whatever it is that comes with the PC. Next question. What's running on your website, current scripts and plugins? So when we look at current scripts and plugins, are there any duplicate scripts that are running? For example, do you have Google Analytics running as a plugin and also have analytics code on the site? That can slow you down. It's extra. Also plugins. Are you using a plugin that you don't need? Did you decide that you were going to go with a certain social media plugin or social sharing plugin for your website, and then you decided not to use that one and use a new one, never turned off the old one? Just because you're not using it doesn't mean the lights aren't running, so to speak. So go through your current scripts and plugins and make sure you're using all of them. And page speed tools will help you. Any of these tools, that's not a particular tool, any of the page speed tools can help you look and see, less so much Google page speed, but GTmetrix and Pingdom will help you look and see, and Web Page Test will help you look and see what's running. And obviously in WordPress, if you see things that are duplicate that are running, you can turn them off, the plugins. Same thing with how you actually implement the plugins. What happens is you have to put plugins on certain pages, or really scripts on certain pages. And what happens is if you use a tag manager, such as Google Tag Manager, it really balances and limits how much your website has to load and when it loads it. So that can be very beneficial to speed. Now, another problem we look at is that there's no caching plugin. And we're going to talk about in a moment what that means. So adding a caching plugin is the solution when there's no plugin. And the one I use is WordPress Total Cache, W3TC. Now, that caching plugin is a beast to configure. I mean, you can go online and look at a basic configuration. That you could spend a day with that, but there are certain things that you can test. It takes some time because there is variation, so you have to test what works for you. That's certainly a way to help speed up your website really easily and get tremendous gain. So these 4 things that I've showed you are pretty straightforward things that you can do or have someone do for you to get really significant gains out of them. Now, let's talk about speeding up your site in general. Now, how do we speed up your website? Well, number one, what you want to do is use one of the tools that we just discussed to look at your website score. I hate scores. Web Page Test, I think, does it. A, B, C, and D. I believe GTmetrix gives you grades as well for ranges of scores. Google and GTmetrix, I don't think it does. And I know that Google PageSpeed gives you a number, which makes people nuts. And I wish it wouldn't do that. But it's just not representative of what really has to go on. Now, different tools give you different results, and that is normal. This is not like an X-ray where I take a film today and then take a film in a different room today, and I got to get a different image. It should be consistent. GTmetrix might have you ranking or a little bit faster or slower than the same page on Web Page Test, and that's totally normal. One of the reasons for that is all of these tools aren't always testing from the same location. So I believe that Web Page Test will test from, I think, the northern United States or Dallas or Virginia. GTmetrix can test from Vancouver or I think Dallas. So, obviously you're looking at a range, and, so here, the same tool can give you different results for the same site. Again, that just depends on how busy that tool is. So there are a number of factors that go into that. So what I would tell you is run the test multiple times and make sure you're running it from the same location each time. Obviously, if you run the test, you can select Amsterdam, let's say. That's great, but nobody in Amsterdam is visiting your site in the middle of New Jersey is likely to become a patient. So it makes sense to at least test from the United States. As long as you're testing from the US, and you pick a US location when you're testing, that should be fine. Run it multiple times, like I said, with the same tool, just to get an idea of what's going on and to get some consistency, get a baseline. Also, make a change and then run the test again, just to see if it made a difference. And that's one of the reasons I really love working with PageSpeed. It's pretty easy to do, and every item cannot be fixed. You can't, like I said, you can't get 100 out of 100 on Google's PageSpeed, and it's a matter of how much time you want to spend fixing it versus how much practical result you're going to get or how much practical reward you're going to get from actually doing it. So, and that's something that we kind of on the development end, we do it as a judgment call. If something's going to take 2 hours to do, and it probably is not really going to make that much of a difference, will help you by 0.1 second, I really don't want to spend the time doing that unless I really see the need to. And often with the little things, you just don't have to. Or at least the little things in page speed. Yes, on the web, but not on page speed. So this is an exercise in being perfect versus being practical. I hate to put it like this. You can certainly make a good crown that is clinically acceptable that isn't perfect. Could the shape of the contact be a little bit better? It certainly could. Is the contact clinically acceptable? Absolutely. So, it's a decision you have to make. But generally speaking, I work on a clinically acceptable level, and if it's clinically acceptable for page speed, then I'm okay with that. Okay, so let's talk about website caching, and then we'll wrap up. When it comes to website caching, you're going to use a caching plugin like W3 Total Cache. And so what caching does is it basically helps your browser remember what's going on. It helps your browser remember what it's working with. So it helps you to save commonly used graphics and scripts so that every time someone comes back to your website and they visit a different page, it doesn't have to reload the whole page again. You can think about that like your logo. When you first visit a website, you load the logo. When you come back to the website a second time, you don't have to load the logo again. Similarly, if you visit the homepage of a website, and then you visit the About page, it would be a shame if your browser had to reload the whole logo again. So instead, what your browser does is it saves the logo, and when it loads the About page, it says, hey, the web page is asking for this logo, but I already have a copy of the logo, so I don't have to download it again. And that helps make your pages go faster. And then, of course, if you come back next week and say, what was that dentist's name? Or what did he say that was called, or she? That's where you also save it with caching. The other thing caching can do, and it's not technically caching, what a plugin can do, it helps compress files, which leads to faster loading times. Like we said with images, a 5 meg image right off your camera is going to take forever to download from your email and from the web, whereas a 30 to 50 kilobytes file or 50 to 70 kilobyte image is really probably a lot better. And so we have something called minification, which you don't want to do by hand. What that means is it compresses the contents of a file and removes white space. Now, that might seem insignificant to you, and at some level it is. But if you have a number of different script files, let's say, and a number of different CSS files that many sites have, if you can save 10 kilobytes a file or 20 kilobytes a file, and there are 5 files, you're saving 100 kilobytes, that can make your site load faster. So certainly, again, that's something you don't do by hand. One of these plugins would do it for you, just to help give you that extra little boost. And a CDN. A CDN is a content delivery network. Most dental sites aren't using it and don't need to use it. What a content delivery network really is for is if you have a website, let's say in Texas, and you serve clients in California, New York, and Canada, it makes sense to have a copy of your website on a computer in Canada and one in California and one in New York, because the people from New York are going to have to wait for the web traffic to go to Texas and back. People in Vancouver are going to have to wait for Texas and back. So what a content delivery network does is it saves copy of the assets of your site, the logo, the images, and that sort of thing on different areas across the country and across the globe, so people don't have to download directly from your site. Sometimes we use them for certain things. Generally, we don't really have to, but that's something you might hear, so I wanted you to hear about it. Now, let's look at an example and we'll wrap this up. So if you look at, this is from, I believe this is from Pingdom. If you look and see from this page, it doesn't matter what page it was, that you can see here, looking at this page is 1.63 megabytes. You want to keep a page under a megabyte. So HTML, this is great, hardly anything. But if you look at this, 1.24 megs of scripts, that's tremendous, that's too big. So what we need to do is look and see what scripts are we running. And it might turn out that we need to have those scripts. It's very possible. We have to have those scripts for this website to run, and that's the end of that. However, if you look and see, you might find that you actually don't need all those scripts, or you don't need a certain script. You can replace it with a different script. Because here, this is great, having these low numbers here. But once you start getting to 1.24 megs of scripts, it's a lot of scripts. And what you can actually look at here is you can see that when you're looking at file requests on Pingdom, on the Pingdom tools, you can pick the sort order. And I like to sort by file size so I can see. And you can't see behind there, but what I can tell you is this is the jQuery library. It's 248 kilobytes. And so that's the thing. So here are actually some of those scripts. And some of these we could probably eliminate, or at least figure out a better way to deal with them, because that's way too much, too much space it's taking up just for those scripts. So what I did here is I did an online video, and I'm not going to walk you through it now because it's self-explanatory. I'm going to walk you, this is a video, it's about 6 or 7 minutes long, where we actually run a test on a page, on a real live website, and show you what it means and how you can think about how to attack the problem of slow loading page. Oh, and this was just from some of the new things that we're offering now for our clients. The pilot programs that we're doing is we are running split tests, which let you test aspects of your website. If my homepage says contact us or call now or learn more, does it make a difference? Do I get more clicks? Newsletter marketing, where we are reaching out to your existing patients to help you build a newsletter base. And generating quarterly or semi-annually newsletters to help you keep in contact with your patients. And marketing automation, where we basically you want to send information about implants to patients who like implants, who are interested in that, and send information about dentures to patients who are interested in dentures. And that's where marketing is going, and I'm proud to say that we are at the forefront of that with our new programs. Thank you for your time. That concludes Webinar Wednesday for tonight. Here's my contact information. I recommend you check out the webinars on November 15th. Oops, and I left the December date out. It is December 13th. And I leave my contact information up. And let's take a look and see if there are any questions. And we do not have questions at this time. So we're going to wrap it up for this evening. And I want to thank you all again for coming, for taking the time out of your busy days and evenings to spend time with us. And I hope you have a wonderful night. And as always, have any questions, you can send me an email or find us on our Facebook group. Thanks again and have a great evening.